man. So good.
Dinner is bubbling as we speak.
Well, as you've just heard, dinner is bubbling. So Mark Woods is going to courier food to all of us. What are you cooking? What are you cooking, Mark?
I am cooking stewed pork, some red beans, a bit of rice, and I'm making what technically would be like a mango chow marmalade or a mangolade or a chowlade if you want to call it. I ain't sure what I'm calling it yet, but I've been trying to make a mango chow into a marmalade.
And did you prepare enough portions for 7?
Exactly.
Of the food, maybe we could stretch the
Anyway, everybody, welcome. Thank you for joining Caribbean Rum Chronicles. Always look forward to seeing you all, and it's another episode and a bit more fun. We are going to try and have some more discipline this week, and our target is 1 hour. We did 1 hour 10 minutes last week, and our audience were quite shocked because they expect Caribbean time from us, and if we run over, we wouldn't be Caribbean people, would we? I mean, that's part and parcel of it. So, without further ado, let me welcome my co-hosts, as always, in order that they appear on my screen, which is Emmanuel Ferris-Hugh, better known as Manny. Good to have you, Manny. You're going to be hearing a lot from Manny today, because today is all about bartending. We have the Rum Doctor, better known as, Kelvin Greer, better known as the Rum Doctor. I don't know if he's carried out any surgery recently, but
I have indeed. So they were quite pleasant and happy.
He promised to tell me about that later on, so we'll keep that for another conversation. We have Mark Woods, Mr. Rumbling himself. Okay, a gentle hi, the man who's cooking, and a guest who, at this rate, this is now the second time he's been on the show, but and the second of many more to come. By the time you finish with him, it might end up being a co-host, Mr. Jamal Bowen of Top Shelf Bar Academy. Who's doing some amazing work in Barbados, although he might not be in the sunshine just at the moment.
Nah, not right now.
I need to ask you some questions about Barbados, so we'll get back to that a bit later on. And our first timer, a virgin for the show, I think it's pronounced Jurnik.
Jurnik, yes, sir.
Jurnik, and where are you at the moment?
I am currently at home, Curacao.
In Curacao, yes, and Curacao, a place that I've been more than once actually, and I've been to Curacao for the North Sea Jazz Festival on more than one occasion. It used to be a highlight in the Caribbean calendar as festivals go, and I mean, don't let the word jazz fool you, because it had some of the major R&B and soul artists that you could ever imagine, and I've seen from Usher, Enrique Iglesias, I've seen Lionel Richie, the list goes on, and it is an amazing job. But it hasn't happened. I mean, obviously, COVID. Well, no, actually, it's an August show, so August, September. So COVID would have knocked it out this year, but it didn't happen last year either, did it?
No. It was postponed to this year, but unfortunately, due to COVID, it can't go on. So let's hope next year. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, indeed.
Finally,
listen.
Hi, everyone.
And just to let you know that we're not sexist, this is just purely on fact. The most beautiful of all of us has just joined.
No lighting.
Right. So anyway, let's get into it. Also, we'll run over the hour by too much time. Today we really want to talk about the challenges that bartenders face in the Caribbean, and what do we need? What was the title? What do we need to do to help fix that? And actually, I think the first time that Jamal and I met on a Zoom conversation, this was a topic that came up between us, and the audience we were the only two Caribbean. No, there was one other person I think that were on there.
One of them.
Yeah, on the platform, and we were talking about people wanted to know what happened, and I refer back to a book that which is one of the recommended books that we'll talk about a little later on, called Potions of the Caribbean. Potions of the Caribbean is written by a man named Jeff Beachbum Berry, and he mentions it as a chapter in the end of the book where he talks about the lost cocktails of the Caribbean, that the Caribbean no longer produces these great cocktails. And it was something because he talked historically about the great cocktails, the places in the Caribbean that you could go to get the great cocktails. You know, we talk about Queen's Park Hotel for the Swizzle, Myrtle Bank for the Myrtle Bank Rum Punch, and we can go on and on about naming, well, obviously Cuba, and Cuba still has some cocktail heritage, but I mean, it's what happened to the cocktail industry in the Caribbean? I mean, we've become rum mixer drinkers.
Yeah, because that's from my experience going to the Caribbean back and forth. It's just really just guys just mixing rum and coke and just putting rum with coke, and that's about it. They don't have that flamboyant, mixing and balance making and that real authentic cocktail feel. So
what happened, Jamal?
Yeah.
What happened? I guess for me, I always tell people bartenders just got a little lazy sometimes. It's just the truth. I mean, it happens in every single industry. It's not just in ours. But what you don't want to do is that you don't want to lose your heritage. And the thing for me is that when you guys were discussing tea punch a couple of weeks ago, to see that the tea punch is still going really strong, right? And then in Barbados, we have the corn and oil. And one of the things that we do at the academy is that we have to talk about the corn and oil because a lot of up and coming bartenders have no idea what corn and oil is.
Wow.
And the mere fact that you might think you know what a mojito is, or you go somewhere and someone gives you a Mai Tai that is blue or a Mai Tai that is red, it shows that the heritage and the culture is lacking a bit. I mean, you can stray away from the norm or stray away from, what the traditional cocktail is and put your own spin on it, but call it yours. But you still need to identify with what was before and know what that was as well.
Do you think it might also be a result of the palate of the tourists that come into the country? Because they're expecting sweet drinks, and it means bars survive because they cater towards that palate, and it means it's not necessarily easy to produce drinks or give a tourist a corn and oil because it might be a little bit too challenging for them, or
depending on the place,
But also, just as a point to kind of interject here, tourists drink what they see locals drinking, and they would follow. If a local said, "This is what I would drink," okay, well, I'm in your country, I'll drink that as well. So I think historically, perhaps somewhere in the midst of when hotels may have been seen as somewhere fancy to go, locals were not necessarily going to those hotels per se at the time when those places were very popular. When that culture changed, post-colonization, people want to go out and kind of be themselves, but they're not connecting with that old culture. And I think maybe that gap is where we may have lost the idea of drinking a cocktail as a local. But we don't see a rum punch as a cocktail. We just see it as a rum punch. It's not there's no specialness in a rum punch. And a rum punch is a very complicated drink to get right. People just throw things in a glass and go. So I think maybe those things, if local people in Barbados don't know about a corn and oil, if locals don't know about locals in Martinique giving you a tea punch because that's what they drink.
Exactly.
But it's a mix of the palate change and what you just mentioned, Mark. Because when Jamal mentioned the Mai Tai, I mean, I was in Curacao in February, and I was in a particular bar, in Mambo. Jurnik, I know you know Mambo well. And this guy made me a Mai Tai, and the Mai Tai was just sweet. It was just like the sugar. That's all. It just sweet. And I was like, this is not a Mai Tai. This it's just sugar. So maybe that's what the people that's coming there, not locals, but people, tourists. I don't know if Junde could
Depends.
comment on that.
It depends. It's little by little it's starting to change right now. But they do have a mindset here that, it has to be sweet and strong to be a cocktail, But, I think it's our job as bartenders to, like try to convince the people to try something new, like maybe try something a bit more balanced, a bit more, between sweet and sour. Something a bit more sour maybe, like daiquiri, for example. Not the traditional like pour in the blender with the ice, but to make like the original recipe of the daiquiri, the refreshing feeling. So I think, yeah,
I wonder as well.
Can I just say something though?
Of course you
In
can.
a lot of the hotels and restaurants, the food and beverage directors are often not local. So the decisions are being made by.
Yeah, I see Jamal's reaction. Yep.
Yeah, because in many places I see the food and beverage director, and it's a guy who's just here for a short while from Miami or from France or from Europe somewhere, and they are the ones who will select who makes the menu. They are the ones who will select where the direction of the food and beverage of that hotel or restaurant is going. So actually what I find in most establishments, of the bigger establishments at least, local people do not have a say. They are just there to serve and just do their bit and don't say or ask any question. If you say, well, lime would be better in that, it wouldn't. The Miami people want it like this, and that's how it's going to be. So I think that's got a lot to do with it.
And on following on that point and what you've said there, which is perfect to where I wanted to get to, is the culture and even the historic culture of cocktails has been driven by the hotel industry. And the hotel industry therefore caters predominantly for tourists. And with any industry, and Manny, you can, and well, all of the people who on here can lay testament to this, is who drives the menu? Do you allow the consumer? Do you allow the inmates, or do you allow the staff to drive the menu and what you should drink? Because it's always a challenge there, because quite often you cater for that tourist, as you've said, Lizette, that wants this and wants this sweet drink and wants that. But there's another set of them that really have no idea what they want to drink. And, have we got the people? Have you got the people who are willing to say, no, that's not how you should have it. This is how it should be made. And somebody comes in for a daiquiri and says, can I have a strawberry daiquiri? Nobody ever says, well, have you ever tried a proper daiquiri?
Yeah.
So how is that progression happening, or are we still being driven by the tourist industry? By the tourists, not the industry, by the tourists.
In my experience, I try to convince them to, try the traditional one. That's me personally. But again, it comes back to who manages the place. Like sometimes they think they want to, cut down on costs on staff costs. So they say, no, don't make your own syrup. Don't get fresh lime juice. Here's prepackaged stuff. So that's where you lose the quality. But if I have the chance, I will do the traditional one to, give them the feeling like, oh wow, this is so much better.
Sorry guys, there's some feedback somewhere. I don't know where.
I think Jurnik probably needs. If when you're not speaking, Jurnik, can you mute your microphone? Because I think it's you. Can you mute it a minute, just for a minute? Can you mute it?
Yeah,
can you see the mute?
Yeah, you did it.
Yeah, I'm still hearing.
I'm still hearing it, so it's not Jurnik.
Yeah, unmute it. It's fine.
Oh, there we go.
Yes. Okay. Hello. Yep. 1 2 1 2. Okay, it's gone now.
It's gone.
Yeah.
Who's muted?
Mark is muted and Jamal is muted and Lisette is muted.
I think it was Mark.
I think it is Mark.
Always Mark.
Right. So,
getting back to that point, right? The thing with me, where I used to work at Sandy Lane, and I always tell people I was a bit of a rebel when I was there, because food and beverage managers, I always used to tell them, you guys come and go, I stay here, I work here. So whenever they came and they tried to change something on the menu, I would always go to the numbers. I would always tell them, look, this cocktail sells this amount per year every year. It doesn't make sense taking this off the menu to put something on the menu that you like. I even had a food and beverage manager come to me once and went, "Oh, look, this item is on Facebook. It's got over 4,000 likes. We need to put this on our menu." And it was like, how many of our guests are on Facebook, and how many out of them are in the 4,000 that like this particular photo or drink or whatever the case is? And he's like, "I don't know." And I said, "Well, the same way you don't know, I don't know. And I'm telling you that they're not going to like this drink." And I would always have that battle all the time because of what my post was. And I was the resident mixologist there for 5 years. And because I was installed by a former food and beverage director who had a belief system in me, I gave me all creative license to do what I wanted to do. That empowered me to have that kind of, bravado against these kind of people. Not saying that every manager is the same. I'm not saying that every manager is going to come and do these things, but certain people want to put their stamp on a location. Other people want the location to thrive. So the ones that want the location to thrive would follow the model of what was there before that was working. The ones that just wanted to put a stamp on things would come in and try to change things without even taking a look at what was selling, what wasn't selling, and that type of stuff. But not every person in the Caribbean is going to have the opportunity that they had. So Lisette is very right. Lisette is very right. In most cases, you may get a manager, you may get 4 managers in a year based
Yeah,
on your location.
absolutely. I see it all the
You know,
time. You go in and there's another one, and you're like, "Oh, hi," and they're like, "Oh, I've just came from St. Kitts, and I'm here now." And you go, "Okay,
exactly.
great." And what's your intentions? And they're like, "Well, there's some things wrong with this. Have you seen this?" And you're like, "You just come here. You don't know anything about the island,
Yeah.
but you're going to be representing what people eat when they come to your establishment." And that is what I think is fundamentally wrong.
All right.
Correct.
Before we continue, I've got Rakesh Madhu saying checking in from Trinidad and Tobago.
Hi.
Respect to Jamal and Jurnik. So you
Yeah,
guys got some fun.
that's our bar brother, man.
There you
We've
go.
also had Miguel, who said he wanted to join, but he has to go to an event. Miguel from Mount Gay. My good friend Flavio from Portugal. Big up to Flavio, amazing bartender. Boo from New York has joined in, and a mixologist named Marv Cunningham.
Mark.
Oh, not just a mixologist. That's our new Angostura Global Brand Ambassador
Oh,
for the Bahamas.
Okay,
From the Bahamas.
okay, welcome,
Yeah, he just want to come.
welcome.
That's another
So,
one of our brothers as well.
okay, so on this point, let me move on to talking about some of the challenges that you faced in the Caribbean. And during it, can we get you to talk a little bit about when you started, your background, and how you've managed to get where you've got, and some of these barriers that maybe you faced that Lizette mentioned.
Right. I'll try to keep it short because we're at time limit. Um, well, I started maybe 3 years ago. I always had the passion for bartending, but I always used to like just mix drinks in events and those kind of things. So eventually, I started to get into the cocktail world, and I fell in love. Like you will never stop learning. Like every day, I learn something new. Even till this day, I'm still learning. And I think that's the best part of it. It doesn't get boring. Keep on learning, and at a certain point, I got really like confident in what I do. And a friend of mine told me to, you know what, you got the potential. We want to see you in a competition. I was scared. But you know what? To get off my comfort zone, I said, you know what? I'm gonna do it. I took the courage. I did it. I won, which was my surprise. And then the next year, I had to go into the competition, Taste of the Caribbean 2018, and that's where I met Jamal and Marv and Cash and Ira, and they were the judges. And what I really like about Caribbean, like the Taste of the Caribbean, it's a competition, but you don't feel like it's a competition. It's like Caribbean coming together to share knowledge. Like everybody has their own styles of making drinks, food, those kind of things, and like everybody learns from each other. So when I got there, I was like, I'm gonna compete. I'm gonna win. And once I got there, I felt like, this is not a competition. This is just how we need to, help each other, help Caribbean grow. So I fell in love with the competition the first year. And when I got back in Curacao, I said, no, I have to go again. So I did the competition all over again. Came back in 2019, and that's when I won the Caribbean Bartender of the Year competition. But it started like I knew nothing at first, but I always wanted to learn. I didn't learn like in a hotel, or it was more like learning on Google, YouTube, and just getting the basics, trying new things out, like homeschooling myself, you can say.
Okay.
And I did get help. Don't get me twisted. I did get some help, ask around. But at one point, I was like, I need to stop asking and start doing some things myself. And that's how I started to grow to become where I am right now. And yeah, I'm happy where I am. And I know there's a lot more coming. There's a lot more I can learn. So that's where I'm going right now. But in Caribbean, I think big there's a big possibility. Like we have so much flavors, we have so much techniques, and I want to be part of the group that sets the trend to make high quality cocktails, well balanced cocktails and those kind of things. So
Fantastic.
Okay.
Fantastic. I know, Kelvin, you've got a few questions.
Yeah. So just to let people know, those who don't know what the Taste of the Caribbean is, it's a competition of food and beverage.
Yes.
It just brings the Caribbean culture, showcasing the Caribbean culture together. It has been going on, I think, believe from since 1993. So just to demonstrate the skills that we have
Mhm.
in the Caribbean, whereby the chefs, bartenders, and I think there's various different competitions. There's a Caribbean National Culinary Team Competition. There's a Caribbean Culinary Individual Competition. There's a
Yeah.
Caribbean Chef of the Year. There's a
Hmm.
Caribbean Junior Chef of the Year, and there's a
Hmm.
Caribbean Bartending of the Year, which is the one you won, right?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yep.
sir.
Well done. Well done. I'm proud of you by that, by the way. Yeah. Proud of you. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you, son. And last but not least, there's the Caribbean Pastry Chef of the Year.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know, Google it. It's a really, really amazing event and competition.
Yeah.
So in just short, so since you went one, came back with enthusiasm to continue. I understand also you have a training program in Curacao that you do, right?
Yes.
So
Trying to start with that.
tell us a bit about the training program that you have in Curacao, please.
It's how I started. I was really passionate about making cocktails, but I didn't know where to start yet.
Right.
You can get a lot of info, but you don't know where to start, where to ask, and that's where I want to come with a program.
Right.
Get like the basic of bartending, like
Mhm.
tools, techniques, classic cocktails, how to make your own syrups, fresh ingredients, all of
Right.
those things combined. Product knowledge, very important. Product knowledge. When you're
Right.
gonna use a white rum, when you're gonna use a dark rum, spice rum, or whatever. So it's more about giving someone the basic. It's not gonna give you like everything, but I'm gonna give you a basic to start off on that, and eventually, if you know the basic, you can just grow on that because you know everything to
Nice.
start with. So that's what the program offers.
Nice. Nice. And what? And
It's
in
not
terms
like
of
them all.
okay. And what's in? I mean, no, I know each Caribbean island or country has a different feel, different vibe. What is the bartending progression in general in Curacao for like up and coming bartenders? I mean, from your experience, the
Mhm.
opportunities that you didn't have, but you
Mhm.
still powered through YouTube,
Mhm.
which is the best thing for knowledge and information. Well, information. Let's use the word information.
Mhm.
What kind of availabilities in terms of progression are there in Curacao in general for bartenders?
There are a lot. I mean, in Curacao, you can ask around. I think that's the only thing we have right now. But we don't have like an academy right now at the moment. Hopefully, in a few years, we can start developing that one.
Okay.
But up until now, that's why I started this because I think that we need it so someone can get like a basic to start upon, and
Nice.
from there, some more advanced lessons But we do have like the occasional workshops. We have also when the judges come to judge us from before the Taste of the Caribbean, they come and they also gave like a little workshop on how to, become a better bartender and how to make cocktails or like make syrups for moods, those kind of things.
Right.
So it's growing little by little, but we're not there yet. So I'm trying to help to, elevate the level where I can.
Right.
Okay.
And just quickly, Flavio just discussed the point about how much you guys get to use local products or whether you have to use
I was just going to on that.
international products. But Jamal's going to touch on that a little bit later on when he talks about the use of local produce.
Okay.
So we'll leave that to when Jamal has his little pieces a bit later on. So
well, thank you very much, Nick. I mean, stay with us. I mean, we have a lot more stuff to cover.
All right.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
And,
to you, Roger.
And at that point, let's get the same from you, Jamal. A little bit more experience, a little bit. You're becoming an elder statesman now. So tell us a little bit.
Passing the baton. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your journey. Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, sure. So it's basically almost the same as Unix, because when you start out in the region, you don't really have that many people to look up to. Fortunately for me, I had Chesterfield Brown was the only person that I could think of back in the day. Chesterfield Brown is the former global brand ambassador for Mount Gay, for those who didn't know. And this is going back to when Chester used to work at the visitor center in Bridgetown. And I was a student at our hospitality institute here in Barbados, and everyone knew that I wanted to be in the bar. Although I could cook, but I used to talk too much, so being in the kitchen was a no-no. I made a lot of my colleagues get cut by talking too much in the kitchen. So whenever we got in the restaurant, it was the same thing. Just throw Jamal in the bar. Jamal wants to mix drinks. We don't want to go in there. We don't want to take stock. We don't want to do all these things. And it just grew from there. It's the first A+ I ever gained hospitality school, and I just kept it running. And to meet Chesterfield Brown back then, he just won an award in London for something. I think it was like making a cocktail or something or the other. We did a tour to Mount Gay, and I got to meet him. So I gave him a cocktail recipe to look at, and he says, "You want to make it for me?" And I said, "Well, sure. Let me make it for you." He made it. And he tasted it. He said, "Well, when the others go, you stay. I'll meet you in the car park." And he says, "What do you think I could get for that recipe?" And I was like, "What is it?" So he went back inside, came back out, gave me an envelope. He said, "This is for you. I'm going to use this recipe in the bar." He went back a couple of weeks later, and the cocktail was on the cocktail list. And from then it was like, look, if Chesterfield Brown is someone that I'm looking up to that's going to be using my cocktail in a bar, I should probably get into this. And after that, it was just getting into a lot of local, small competitions, and then bursting onto the scene into the Bartender of the Year competition here. I'm still the youngest person to ever win Bartender of the Year in Barbados. I wasn't 21 just yet. But I was 21 when I was going to Miami. So I was able to enter the competition. So I'm still the youngest ever Bartender of the Year in Barbados. And then after that, I went to Sandy Lane. I was there for 15 years. And my first 2 years, I was there as an assistant waiter. But I always wanted to be in the bar. So somebody called in sick.
Explain to people who don't know Barbados what Sandy Lane represents.
Okay, so Sandy Lane is our most exclusive high-end hotel, 5-diamond establishment on the island of Barbados. It's been around since the 60s. And this is where all the rich and wealthy people from all over the globe would usually stay. I mean,
it's not just exclusive and 5-star in Barbados. This is
around the world.
This is an internationally recognized high-end hotel.
Because one of the things I was actually going to say is that when I started working there, it was one of the top 15 hotels in the world. And that's 18 years ago now, but I mean, it's still going to be in the top 100 at this point. But so many other hotels have joined the fray since then. But back then when I joined, it was within the top 15 hotels globally. And we just reopened after 3 years of construction.
So what's the chance of
And
me getting a room in there for a holiday?
I think if we save enough for like 2 years, and we all pool our resources together, we could probably get the
Wow.
villa for 2 days.
Wow. Okay, continue. That just hurt my feelings. Continue. I'm gonna ask some more questions.
No problem. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't come without its challenges. I mean, limited resources. One of the things that I always tell people, and this is not just for me, this is across the Caribbean as well. Yeah, we have a lot of rum, yes, but back then we didn't have. Back then we're going back like 18 years. So back then we didn't have a lot of brands available. So it was Sandy Lane, but we only had like 5 vodka brands, and that was basically due to distributors, right? And that's when I was big on vodka. That was a long time ago, obviously. Information was lacking. I mean, I will confess, my first mojito that I made at Sandy Lane was made in a rock glass. Didn't have any soda water, and that's because someone just went on Google because a guest came and asked for mojito. That's what they saw. That's what we made. It's only like 9 months or 10 months after I did some research, I realized, okay, it's from Cuba. It's not in a rocks glass. It's in a taller glass. It's supposed to be longer. It's supposed to be refreshing, that kind of thing. And that came with networking as well, talking to a lot of people overseas. Tools and equipment, also something that's limited. When students come to the academy now and they see the amount of tools that I have in my arsenal, because they actually use some of my personal tools at the academy. And things like julep strainers are not readily available in most bars. Different types of glassware, shakers, all types of stuff, right? So those are limited resources as well, and even opportunities. I always tell people I've been fortunate, and some of my trainees have been fortunate to travel the globe to go to other places around the world, but it's not for everyone, right? Everyone doesn't get that chance, unfortunately. Um, and then there are lots of misconceptions about bartenders in the Caribbean as well. That we only make sweet drinks. We were talking about that earlier. One of my students actually went to a very plush bar in the UK for UK Rum Fest last year, and there was a ongoing joke amongst the bartenders at the location. You know, he's from the Caribbean. We're not really going to let him mix too many drinks. You know, and then one day, one of the bartenders went, "Can you mix a daiquiri?" And he said, "Sure, daiquiri, sure, no problem." And the first thing he picked up was a coupe glass. And the guys are like, "You're putting a daiquiri in a coupe?" And he's like, "Yeah, that's the way it was trained." And after that, he actually ran their service bar for 5 days.
Wow.
Because they were shocked that he actually was going to shake a daiquiri and pour it into a coupe. You know, so the misconception there is that we're only going to mix sweet drinks. We're only going to use the blender to make daiquiris and all that kind of stuff as well. From my standpoint, now after my tenure at Sandy Lane, there are a lot of people who don't think that I have the training to provide development services. I mean, I have countless clients around the Caribbean and also in Barbados, but there's still some that second guess the information and the knowledge that I have. They're looking like one client was like, "Oh, we're going after these guys from the US." You know, we went on their website and we could see what they have to offer. So it was like, "Did you check my website?" And they're like, "You have a website?" I was like, "Yes, I have a website."
Yeah. No, for me, why do you think they will always go elsewhere, not in the Caribbean, where you have experienced people like yourself who know it?
Yeah.
Why do you think they will still go out? Is there a
No,
reason that you may know of, or
it is always the same deal. It is always the inferiority complex that we even talk about it in rum. Because Roger will tell you, I've spoken about it in the rum chat as well. The inferiority complex is such that we tend to believe that things that are from our own people are not necessarily the best things in the world. And sometimes it's because you know, we look at a bottle and the bottle says Hennessy VX, but then we look at a Mount Gay Eclipse or a Dorley's 5. And we're like, oh, the Hennessy VS is a stronger brand. It's from France. It's cognac, you know. But then when we break it down to the students and we're like, okay, did you realize that Dorley's 5 is actually older than a bottle of Hennessy VS?
Yeah. I think that's a problem maybe all over, because in Curacao, and I think Junior can back me up with that. I mean, the reason, because Curacao is not really a big rum drinking culture, and where they will go more, they'll go for the Bacardi, which is a great rum, but there's more than just Bacardi.
Yeah.
And what they go to stuff is Johnny Walker. Now, Johnny Walker, back in the days when I didn't know about rum, my dad is a Johnny Walker drinker. You know, he used to drink Johnny Walker, and I'll teeth a little sample from his cabinet. You know, yeah, we all did that when we were younger. But in terms of the rum culture, Chris has never been in that.
I think as well, we can't not dismiss the whole issue this year of Black Lives Matter movement. In terms of this is not just a Caribbean problem. This is a lack of respect sometimes for not just Caribbean people, but Black people on the planet. In terms of, well, you can't be as good as a white person or a non-Black person. Right?
Yeah, because Ian Burrell, not crossing you, Roger. Right? Ian Burrell last year had posted on his Facebook page actually a number of persons from the Caribbean who have never been invited to give seminars at certain global events.
I saw that.
And the reason why I remember it is not only because he mentioned me, and all credit to him, because I don't even think that I was ready for that step either, but he mentioned me in the post. But when I saw the number of persons that he listed, there weren't just Caribbean people. There were people from the US, there were people from the UK. Some of us have actually added each other on Facebook and stuff like that after being named in the post. So what Roger is saying is actually 100% correct. It is a respect situation where some people just don't think that our information is valuable, but we some of us do have lots of information that we're willing to share.
I think it's also what I found really interesting is that I'm British in the Caribbean, even though I'm Caribbean heritage. So if, for example, I'm talking to the food and beverage directors from the Caribbean, their perception is one thing. So let's say I go in and I have a meeting with them, they kind of see me as a Caribbean person. If I'm on the other end of a phone and I'm just visiting the UK and I'm talking to them, it's a completely different conversation. They see me as an international person, and it's amazing. I've done it about 4 times. And every time I'm like, oh, I'm in London at the moment, blah, blah, blah. I'll be there next week. They have so much respect. If I say, oh, yeah, I just live up the road, they're like, oh, you're Caribbean. Okay. And it really is interesting, and it's fun for me because I do it sometimes just to see where a person's coming from. I'm like, yeah, I'll be in London, so I'll call you from there. And so maybe that's a trick.
And can I ask Manny, as a Caribbean man who has spent most of your life in the UK, what about the challenges that you faced? Is it different?
So it is different. Initially, is a little bit less opportunity because a lot of bars, when I first started bartending when I was young, didn't really want Black or Caribbean bartenders in their bar because they wanted it to look a certain way. They wanted everyone to have the same haircut and wear a waistcoat and be perceived a certain way. That's kind of changed, but you do have to work in a level above in order to get anywhere. But less and less so. I mean, but there's still, if you don't see people you can aspire to in your industry, it makes it difficult to think that it's realistic. And I think because those people are not on the platforms, and as young bartenders, not someone to look up to, it can be difficult, to see it as a real.
So are we saying therefore that our part and parcel of our job is that we have to become role models? We can't just sit in the back anymore, and we have to put our face forward, and we have to show people that, hold on, there are people of the Caribbean, from the Caribbean, there are people of color, and these people also have knowledge and experience that for people to say, hold on, you know, who are these guys? Who are these? You know, what are they doing? And is that a missing factor? Is that part of the Ian Burrell post of the fact that we're not? There's many times, like you say, Jamal, that I've actually told people off, and here in the UK, I said, excuse me, but you're doing a rum talk, and was I not even considered? You know, and and would you like to do it? I went, no. Now you're because I raised it. You haven't answered my question. You've not answered my question, and you know, and you sort of sit there and going, and I've seen the people on the list, and I pretty much confident that I know more about rum than a whole pile of those, right? So why was I not considered? And it's like, and I feel as if we almost have to do more of that. It's almost like we have to call it out, and it's difficult because quite often when we call it out, you think that you're just going to put yourself in somebody's bad books, and you may never get work again. They may never buy your products. They may never, you know, you're on the blacklist, and that's always a fear of so on.
I don't know. I missed a little bit, but in terms of apart from people like ourselves pushing Caribbean influences that we have, Caribbean heritage. We have bartenders here. We have rum experts. Apart from that, how can we actually change it? Because we have I have a message from Flavio saying we have the same problem here in Portugal. So if even in Portugal, how can we change it? What kind of things can we do?
Well, you know what I think you can do? I think you can take a little bit more ownership of stuff and kind of make that now you have the opportunity to reach out to a larger audience that kind of are like-minded, and you have to kind of capitalize on that and create things for yourself, because if it's not going to happen, if we're not being brought in to have those conversations or into the right rooms, then if we make enough noise and do those things for ourselves, that's the way we're going to do it. It kind of it's easier now to reach people than it was before.
And platforms like this, Facebook and what we're doing now and things like this, these are more and more what we need to see that's being offered. And I just want to say John Georges has just bigged you up, Jamal, as well. And good to hear from John.
That's my guy. That's my guy. Love John.
Master Distiller or Master Blender? Ex-Master Distiller or Blender? Angostura. Which one was it? Distiller or blender?
I believe, I believe it's distiller.
I think it was distiller, wasn't it?
Yeah. I believe it's distiller. Yeah.
Well, he can let us know. I mean, just let us know. Let us know, John.
Well, Lizette should know. He's Grenadian.
Yeah, he's not Grenadian.
No, he will let us know at some point. Hopefully.
But let me ask.
The distiller and maybe blender.
All right. But let me sort of move on a little bit.
Yay!
Thank you, John.
There you go.
Let me move on a little bit in terms of as well, before I ask you, Manny, to talk a little bit. But let me just generalize in terms of, we talk about what you're doing at Top Shelf. We talk about what Jurnik is doing in Curacao. Are those skills? Are we? You mentioned the fact of getting bar tools. Are we lacking in those skills? Is it something that they're missing? There's not enough opportunity to develop it for a lot of bartenders across the region.
When you go to some of the what we would call bigger tourist established islands and nations. So you look at Bahamas, look at Barbados, you look at St. Lucia, and a couple of other places. Grenada is getting there slowly but surely, but they're getting there. Jamaica is also coming on board as well now. When you look at these kind of places, we have people who are pushing themselves to get there. But as a region as a whole, we're not there just yet. We have some islands that are not pushing as hard because it is not seen as necessarily as a viable career choice. It's just seen as something that you do as a part-time thing. So if we could get everyone on that same level, we can have more opportunities for growth. It will get better over time, but we need to get away. We need to get more and more respect for the craft, more and more respect for the people in the craft as a region, and as well as getting more accessibility to tools and even to certain books, like the same book we were talking about by Jerry, and countless others that have been lots of different information. Because that book to me is a book that even a Caribbean person can use. Because he's even talking about things like Mobby in that book. How many books they're having Mobby as an ingredient, you know? So tools and equipment is something that is needed, and just development on a whole.
Well, let me ask Manny. Manny, let me ask you to give your little talk about the skill sets required, and especially for those people who are at the early stages of their careers and those who are thinking about getting into the career. Talk to me a little bit about those skill sets that are required.
Well, when you're developing yourself as a bartender, because that's what it really needs to be. It's about self-development. You can have a mentor, you can have a manager who's going to give you some information, but most of the development you make as a bartender is because you have a thirst for knowledge and because you are dedicated to improving your skills individually. So, like when you start out, it's about being able to remember the classic drinks, the specs, and have a decent looking technique. Yeah, but
I've got a couple of them there that you may be able to have a.
Yeah. So there's some major. If you're looking at Caribbean drinks or drinks that are rum focused, there are some majors. The daiquiri, which has a steep history. The Cordon Oil, like we were talking about earlier, from Barbados. The Planters Punch, the Planters Punch, the Rum Punch. Those kind of drinks. But once you get to a certain level, after just knowing the ingredients, as a bartender, you have to start switching on and thinking about what you're trying to achieve with each drink. Like the way you shake a Royal Bermuda Yacht Club is not the same way you're going to shake an old Cuban. Yeah, you have to consider your ingredients and kind of consider everything you do, every element of what you do, and that only comes with practice and time. And you have to be dedicated because you have to learn these things on your own. There's no amount of spoon feeding that's gonna get you anywhere. It's kind of, you have to figure it out. You have to read intensively and find different sources that may have contradictory information. You look at what David Wondrick's written about drinks from the Caribbean and look at what Beach Bum Berry's written. They don't necessarily have parity all the time, but you can take from both and progress yourself. And then once you start to have a knowledge base, because once you understand classic drinks and understand what those drinks are trying to achieve and the techniques and viscosity and temperature, when you take those skills, then you can apply that to making your own drinks. But you have to have the foundation and understanding of components and how different ABVs of alcohol is going to affect the way that it reacts with ice and stuff like that. Then you can start making your drinks and build out that way, and then use what you know. Kind of the Caribbean has suffered a little bit from not exporting ingredients. No one knows about Moby over here. People don't know about Guinness. It's like, but those flavors are rich and powerful, and if people were exposed to them, they would love them. But because we don't have the basis or the foundation in the people producing the drinks, and those drinks being exported, it kind of means that we're losing out a little bit on our voice being heard.
Just to chime in a little bit there, Manny, I think is the difference between food and drinks. We've exported our food ingredients in some ways. Probably it could have been done better, but the food's out there. But we don't respect the drink in the way that we do the food. I think that because there was that gap, as we discussed, in terms of we're not thinking of it as being a liquid chef. Drinking in the Caribbean was seen as a negative thing. Church, you're not supposed to drink a lot if alcohol. Why you want to get a job in a bar? All of those things are kind of cultural. So you connect that to the fact that, well, I only want to export the rum because I have to, because yes, it has some medicinal quality. Yes, there's some tradition connected to it. But beyond that, getting into making a cocktail, you kind of doing the devil work there.
But then it's also, the thing is, it hasn't been perceived globally as a liquid chef until maybe 10 or 15 years ago. The whole craft cocktail movement only changed the way that people thought about drinks en masse. Up until 20 years ago, you didn't, unless you went to the Ritz in London, all the cocktails are rubbish. So it's maybe the Caribbean is only a little bit behind. I wouldn't say that it just seems like it's more acute because of the style of drink that's being made there. But all nations are developing their own drinking culture.
So
And
Chandro, in terms of sorry, go on.
Just reading from the post, just trying to keep it integrated with the people. John Georges said, respect for the craft, develop and promote a more indigenous take on the profession and elevate the same. I think that's
yes. So sorry, I call you Shunro. It's Shunrik. So Shunrik, in terms of Curacao, what Manny just mentioned, the different hotels, the different locations within Curacao. Is it the same in terms of the bartenders, the development, the way they perceive the cocktails, in terms of classics, etc.?
No, it depends. Most hotels, they try to like stick to the same type of drinks, but there are a few hotels that are keeping up with the trend. You know, like fresh fruits, homemade syrups, crafting cocktails, and not that there's a lot of hotels that do that, but maybe a few. And other than that, there are a few bars, maybe 3 or 4 that you can say that really make like craft cocktails. But other than that's a traditional.
And is it because of the type of, because you and I both know, I mean, Curacao is heavily influenced by the Dutch culture. A lot of Dutch people come there, they enjoy Curacao like everybody else. I mean, Curacao is a beautiful place. Do you think it's because of the palates shifts that maybe the Dutch clientele have is much more of a sweeter palate? That's why they kind of tend to stick to that kind of cocktail style?
You know, the funny thing is, in my experience, the Dutch people they tend to like more sour drinks. You know, sour type of drink. But I think it's more like a local thing. Like I'm really trying to like break that way of thinking. Like a cocktail has to be sweet and strong. But I'm just one person, so we're like a handful of people that try to break that tradition. But it's gonna take a few years, I think. Like it has to be strong to be a cocktail.
So can I jump back, Manny, to the skill development of bartenders? And so you're young, you're getting into the industry, but age is not the relevance. You're getting into the industry. You don't have a lot of money to spend, as it may be typical of somebody in the Caribbean. What basic bar tools would somebody need to start off with?
I would suggest you need a Hawthorne strainer, Caricos, a tin-on-tin cocktail shaker. Caricos are the only way to go, really, because they'll last you for your entire bartending career. You need a decent bar spoon. Don't buy a cheap bar spoon, because if you think you can save money on a bar spoon, but it's the weight and the balance of a bar spoon is really important if you're working really quickly. You need a knife, and that's probably about it to start with. It depends on what calories.
What about a jigger?
You need a jigger, yeah. I generally, when I bartend, I usually work with 2 jiggers. I work with a 50-25 and a 20-40, or it'll be.
And in the US terms, that's an ounce or 2 ounce.
Ounce and a 2 ounce, and a smaller one, which would be a 3/4 ounce and an ounce and a half.
Can I call you out? Did you miss out a fine strainer?
And a fine strainer, yeah. You need a fine strainer, but it all depends on what kind of drinks you're making. You know,
just so people know, because I was not a bartender to start out with, this is a Hawthorne strainer. If you don't know what a Hawthorne strainer is.
Thank you. Yeah, that's actually. Thank you, man. Yes.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna stir drinks, you can always use your tins to do that.
You can use. There's actually some people are moving more to only stirring in steel, because it gets down to temperature slightly faster. So some people are leaning in that direction, but as long as the thing is about buying your own tools, it means you get an understanding of how those tools work and what effect they're going to have on the drinks. If you work with the same tools every day of your bartending career, you get to feel a feel for them. You bed them in. They can become like an organic part of your body, you know. So it's important to have your own tools and work with those individually.
And you did mention look after them, yeah? Make sure
you have to look after them.
Don't use a bar spoon to open a bottle of beer. Because I did that a long time ago, and this brother to me, what are you doing? You're gonna bend my drink. Exactly. You open anything with a beer can. Lighter.
Don't use it. I always argue. Don't use your tin. Don't use your tins either to open a beer.
Yeah, true.
Don't use your tins. Those are your hands. Those are your tools.
Yeah,
don't use your tins.
That's a bartending sin if you do that.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier. Just one last point, man. You mentioned about the difference in shaking an old Cuban compared to a Royal Bermuda Yacht Club. How does a bartender without experience know the difference, or if he doesn't know the difference, is there one particular shake that you would recommend always?
Well, the thing is, every drink is different. So what you have to take into account is the viscosity of the ingredients you're using. So if a liquid has more sugar in it, it means you're going to be able to add more dilution to that drink. So you can get down to a lower temperature. So say you're making a daiquiri with 2-to-1 syrup, you're going to be able to shake that for slightly longer because the ice is providing dilution. But if the sugar has less water in it, you can provide more dilution. You can shake it for a little bit longer. But if you're making a drink that's thin, say you're making a Cosmo, all of the elements are quite low in sugar. The triple sec, the lime juice, the cranberry, they're all quite low in sugar, so you can't shake it too long. So it's just about knowing and considering what you're making, what goes into it, the individual elements, and how those are going to react. But that takes time. You get used to taking that into consideration. When you first start out, it will be overwhelming if you're in the middle of service. They're thinking about all the components of one drink. But as you develop, you remember.
And my last question before I move on to Jamal, and this is not a test or anything. This is just a preference. Dry shake before or after with the ice?
I dry shake before ice. But the reason is when you dry shake after you've shaken it, you warm the drink back up again, and you get a better head. But the thing is, you take all of the sugar out of the head, so the drink is disconnected. But if you dry shake first, then shake with ice, it's bonded. Yeah. So it looks more impressive if you dry shake after. But it's not about the show, innit?
And during it, are you a dry shake before or after?
Depends. Sometimes I do it. I have to go to the I have to go. I take.
Okay. So Jamal, talk to me a little bit. I know you have a lot of experience, which is why I wanted you. Is one of the comments I made in the post was, do we utilize the local fruits and spices and produce that we have in the region? And I know you have. And why are we not using them if we are not utilizing them?
It goes back to what Lisette said again. With the managers from abroad who don't understand certain things. And one of the things I always used to do was break it down in cost. If it takes, and we're talking Barbados now, we're not talking where I am right now in the US, we're talking Barbados. A punnet of strawberries in Barbados is anywhere between 14 to 18 Barbados dollars, right? So let's make a drink with fresh strawberries, or even strawberry puree. Strawberry puree might even cost more than the strawberries. And we try putting that into a cocktail, and the cost of the strawberry or the strawberry puree comes out to be, let's say, 75 cents. Just throwing a number out there, 75 cents. Versus you have fresh fruit growing on premise that you're just going to take into the kitchen with simple syrup that's already on premise, and make an ingredient then that costs you about 10 cents for the same amount that you would put in the strawberry or the puree in. You're saving 65 cents. Now, 65 cents doesn't sound like a lot until you multiply it by 10 or until you multiply it by 1,000. Then it starts to make sense. So the thing about me is that I learned from a very young time in my career to start utilizing local produce because it made financial sense. So you get your passion fruits, you get your guinea or your aki as we call it in Barbados. You get your plums, you get all of these things, and you cut your costs substantially. So the thing for me is that you need to you need to utilize those local fruits. You need to be utilizing the star fruit or the carambola as we call it in other places, the June plum or the golden apple as we call it in Barbados. You need to be using sea grape. You need to be using, as I said before, the plums. You need to be utilizing the guinea. Mangoes when they're in season. And that's the other thing. Seasonal menus make the most money because again, you're creating a demand. You can only get this cocktail for this amount of time. If you like it, you gotta come, you gotta enjoy it. We're gonna only have it for the next 2 to 3 weeks. Mango season is gone. There's another season coming. You enjoyed the mango cocktail so much that we're gonna create a cocktail with a different fruit for you in a couple of weeks. Utilizing the exact same recipe, but just swapping out the mango for a different flavor, and we probably change the spirit based on what that fruit is. And the same thing with spices. I'll never forget. I'm not going to say where this happened, but I had a situation where I went into an outlet and I went into the purchasing department, and the guys had a box labeled expired, and in the box was peppercorns, nutmeg, cinnamon, right? Cinnamon and star anise. And I'm like, what do you mean expired? And they're like, the date is gone. And it was like, have you ever seen nutmeg go off? Right? And this is not. This is nutmeg. Nutmeg still in shell, right? And some even have mace on the outside. Wow. And they're like, and I'm like, okay, so did you even know that this is mace? And they're like, mace, what's that? And I was like, it's a spice on the outside of the nutmeg. So right there, you had enough ingredients to make 4 different syrups for 4 different cocktails, right? Wow. And these are the kind of things that happen on the daily. I had but again, I probably shouldn't say gender because I don't want anybody to think that this person was thing because of their gender. But I had a certain supervisor at another location that tried to throw away coconut cream because it was hard. You're storing it in air conditioning.
Exactly. It will be, yeah.
So it's only obviously going to get hard, right? But again, straying away from the point slightly, the thing about it is that there are companies out there that are that are utilizing these practices. And what I'm saying is that even when you want to do things like oleo sacram, your fruits that you cut in the morning that the bartender in the afternoon is probably going to throw away, you don't throw those away. What you do is that you get your sugar and you pile it on top of your fruits. You just make sure that you don't have any pineapple in there because obviously pineapple and allergies and stuff like that. But your oranges go into one into one container. Your limes go into another container, and you top them with sugar, and you keep topping them with sugar every day. By the end of the week, you got all your sacram that you could use for the following week, as opposed to having to go to buy simple syrup. The only thing is that now what you need to do is have a conversation with your guests. Are you allergic to citrus fruit? Or if you want to do one with the pineapple, same thing. But you just have to make sure that people aren't allergic. So all of these are things that we could do with fruits. We could do it with vegetables. And then even when you're looking at your spirits and your wines, your wine goes off. What do you do with your wine just before it goes off? Do you just throw it away? Some cheeky bartenders are going to pour it in a glass and drink it themselves because they don't care. It's just alcohol to them. You could turn that into vermouth, right? You could take that same wine that is about to go off add your spices, the same spices that were in your expired box. Add a little bit of alcohol and some sugar and make vermouth. I know you're giving your customer a Caribbean spin on an Italian classic vermouth.
Exactly.
Right. So and what you're also doing now is that you are guiding your customer's palate as well. So because you're never going to get this again until you come back to me. Right? Because you could go anywhere and get Martini Rosso. You could go anywhere and probably get Gallo or any of these other vermouths. But have you ever tried a homemade vermouth before? Probably not. Right? The coffee that you're grinding in the morning, which is probably going to be Lavazza or Blue Mountain, you take that, you pour simple syrup over that, you leave that in a container. You can now make your own coffee infused syrup. And coffee is somewhat Caribbean, so you could also add that into your cocktail. So you probably don't even have to go and buy Kahlua anymore or Tia Maria anymore to put into your espresso martinis. You're using a homemade coffee syrup, and you just have to probably bump up your alcohol a little bit more, but you're saving on that initial purchase, which is the Kahlua or the Tia Maria, which is going to be expensive for some people depending on where you are in the region. So the thing about it is that yes, we have the challenges of not getting certain ingredients because I can't find creme de valet anywhere. So I probably can't make you aviation or any of these kind of cocktails, but I could probably make you something else with ingredients that I could make for you based on the Caribbean ingredients that I have available to me.
Right? And that's that creativity. That's not a lot of what you've just said is actually not something you need to read. Obviously, you need to read how to make a vermouth, how to make a syrup. But a lot of what you've just said, it's all built on something that's missing from society now, and it's called common sense.
I couldn't have said it any better. I could not have said it any better.
Right. And the fact of the matter is that we live in a culture of expiry dates, and people have forgotten that I made a cream sauce the other day for my steak, a mushroom cream sauce for my steak, and they demanded for double cream. I got the double cream out of the fridge, and it had expired by about 4 days. So it wasn't open, so that's another thing, because it's not open, it hasn't had a chance to oxidize. And once I open it, I put a teaspoon in, take a little piece out, and taste it, and it was fine. Right? Yeah. Now, whatever happened to that? I mean, if just by
I'm not coming for dinner, Roger. I'm not coming for dinner. No, not coming for dinner.
Yeah, you shouldn't be saying everything on this,
expired cheese, but that's fine. It wasn't open.
But and it was so equally the week before, I did something. I used the guava jam that was out of date, and then I googled the guava jam, and I actually googled, does jam go out of date? And there's a whole pile of websites says, well, not really. As long as you store it properly, no, it doesn't. But we lose that common sense, the fact that you can taste something and just make your own conclusion, right? Mm-hmm. If it's something that has obviously years gone by, then you're probably, I think it's best, or months, even a heavy amount of months, and it's a volatile product, put it in a bin. Right, and don't take the chance, but use a lot more common sense. And it was interesting to talk about those different ingredients. And Manny, before, because I'm watching the clock, you had an interesting list of books, and I like how you put them together in certain in terms of what sort of knowledge we're looking at. I don't know what order you want to go through them, but I've got a picture of each of them. Have you got your list in front of you?
Yeah, I have the list. Yeah.
Right, go ahead. You tell me what order you want to start, and
I'll start off with Jerry Thomas.
Right, and
so Jerry Thomas, as I was saying earlier, this is like the bartender's Bible when you first start bartending. This the classic of classics. It's the simplest, oldest drinks, but when you understand these drinks, it's kind of like a foundation for you to build on. If you understand how to make a sherry cobbler, you understand how to make a mojito. They kind of descend from the same place. The next would be the Ideal Bartender by Tom Bullock. The Ideal Bartender.
Oops, sorry, my apologies.
We can talk about Liquid Intelligence.
No. I've got them here. Sorry,
So the Ideal Bartender is written by a man named Tom Bullock, who was a black bartender from America. It's similar to Jerry Thomas. It's a little bit more. It's a little bit further on in its advancement. So there's slightly more modern techniques in there. But it's interesting to read a black man's perspective from that time as a professional bartender.
And Tom Bullock was apparently was the first black bartender to publish a book on cocktails.
Oh wow! Really?
Yeah, and there's some interesting facts there because he mentions a man named Cato Alexander, who was one of the first known black ex-slaves to open his own cocktail bar in New Jersey. I think it was just outside of New York, which was very much the patrons are pretty much all white. And you know my opinions about, and I'm happy to express them in terms of what I feel about bartending. And when you think of cocktails, the history of fairly most cocktails seem to have come out of the United States for whatever reason. Despite some very old ones, the punch from India, we can talk about things like the eggnog from certain places, and the planter's punch, and certain other cocktails that came out of the Caribbean, but majority from the USA. And I argue that most of these cocktails that were developed in the USA came from colonial days. And there is no massa that went into the kitchen and created cocktails, right? Massa would ask a slave to create those cocktails, right? And just the same way he would ask a slave to cook dinner. He may pay for the ingredients, but the slave was the one who blended them together. So we need to understand that we have a lot of credit in terms of developing a lot of drinks and a lot of flavors. So there's my take on it. And if anybody who dislikes me for saying it, then tough luck. But Ideal Bartender, another classic book from the old school. These books are 1800s, I think.
Yes, like turn of the century, I think.
All right, next book.
The next book would be Potions of the Caribbean, which we mentioned earlier. This is more led towards rum-based drinks. There's a lot of tiki drinks in there too.
Explain tiki to our Caribbean people.
So tiki is basically a blend of a few different cultures, but mainly focused on rum. It was popular in the States in the 50s and has re-emerged in the last 20 years here in the UK and in the States. But there was a lot of drinks that were lost, and Jeff has been kind of mining for these drinks throughout history, and he compiles them very comprehensively, and he has no ego towards the drinks. He just wants to get the recipes right. So it means that it creates a really good read, actually. And
in fact, the thing about Potions of the Caribbean too is he's written many books. So any of Jeff Berry's books are very useful books to read, especially if you're rum and into your cocktails. But I mean, Potions of the Caribbean, he delves into the cocktails that actually came or were made in the Caribbean at the various places. We talked about the Queen's Park Swizzle, we talked about the corn and oil, the planter's punch, and he goes back and talks about the history of where they were made and the various venues and so forth.
And he's not a bartender, so he's more
a historian.
He's an historian, so it's very accurate because he hasn't got any agendas. He's not trying to make the drinks a certain way because he's just trying to record things accurately. So if that's what you're into, then you should look at his books. And then there's Punch, which is written by David Wondrich. So this kind of explores the way that punch as a category evolved and its impact on drinking culture in Europe, and then how that spread around the world. So I mean, punch started in, well, it's debatable actually. Punch
India.
it was started in India, but then it became very popular in Europe because they had access to all of the main components, you know, tea, sugar, spirits, all were part of the European empires. So
and the great thing about punches, it's not just talking about rum punches, is it? It gives you a vast variety of recipes. Punch used to be made with sherry and port and arak and all sorts of spirits.
Pimm's is the one everyone forgets. Pimm's is punch, basically. It's just a bottled punch that you add lemonade or tea to. So it kind of it gives you a breakdown of that as a category, which is very interesting because the history of punch kind of influences the trends in drinks going forward. That's the generation before the cocktail boom, isn't it?
Okay.
And then next is the Bar Book by Jeffrey Morgenthaler. So this book is about techniques. So it's just about bartending and how technically you bartend, how you make your own syrups. It has tools, how to use those tools. It gives you shortcuts. It gives you little tips that you may not come across in a like really strict recipe if you need to make a syrup in 15 minutes. So it kind of gives you some of those things that you might pick up in your career and just kind of gets you there a little bit quicker. And then next is Liquid Intelligence, which is kind of a step above this book, is when you want to start creating drinks to a really high standard and you need to understand really quite honed in techniques. And when you're trying to be very specific about what you're trying to achieve, Dave Arnold's book kind of is a little bit more specific, a little bit more technical. I wouldn't read this when you first start bartending because it would be like reading gibberish, basically. And then the next one is The Bartender's Manual by Jim Meehan. This is not really about bartending. It's mainly about service, because bartending is not just about shaking drinks. It's about when your guest comes in, do you greet them? Do you make them feel like they're at home? And do you create like an atmosphere that they're going to enjoy themselves? It's about the nuance of that. So this, again, is maybe if you're supervising a bar or you start managing a bar, it's kind of a little bit further down the line.
It's also, I have a copy of the book. It's also a good book for if you, to be fair, if you actually are going to own a bar, and you might not have necessarily been a bartender. If you're kind of like myself, a drinker that got into the bar business, it's a very helpful experience to read the book because it takes you through the entire journey of bar design, everything, glassware, all the things that you never necessarily think about. And my experience with the book, I got the book actually at an event that he was at. It was quite useful to just, you can pick a lot of it out in terms of how you create the experience and how you want your drinks to look and presentation, continuity.
Yeah. It's about curating your own space. Yeah, it's a very good book.
It's a good book. It's very good.
Yeah. I think we'll leave it there. You want to do one more? Which one's the last one?
Well, I have to mention this because I'm in the credits in this. I'm in the,
Oh, Martin K, yes, Smuggler's Code.
I'm in the credits in this, the first couple of pages. I made the book. I made the book.
This is a great book, actually.
This is a good book. I read it in, I think I couldn't put it down. I read it within a couple of days. It was just one of those books that I just, well written, really fascinating perspective. Martin K is a bar owner, well, ex-bartender. He's a bar owner. He's got more than one bar, but Smuggler's Cove is the name of his rum bar in San Francisco. And he is also very heavily into the tiki culture. But interesting, fascinating read. I mean, what did you think?
Well, it's also what's important. So this, as we were referring to earlier, it's about looking at different sources. So Beach Bunbury covers the same topic, but Martin K comes at it from a slightly different direction as a bartender. So his understanding of the recipes and how the drinks were intended to be is a little bit further ahead. But he kind of has a little bit more understanding of the ingredients as well. So it's a very interesting book. if you're into rum as a category, I would say this is a must read as well as Potions of the Caribbean.
Yeah, and I like how you sort of the two of them in a different perspective. Jeff being a historian and not a bartender. Martin also is quite fascinated with tiki history, but coming from a bartender's perspective. And they both are at loggerheads with the Mai Tai in terms of who the recipe for the Mai Tai, because of the whole issue of Martinique rum being used in the Mai Tai. Jeff Berry believes it was agricole, and Martin Cape believes it was a dark molasses Martinique rum. So they're both at loggerheads.
Where do you come on that debate, Roger?
I'm probably
Don't get him started. Don't get him started.
I'm probably leaning more towards Martin Kate in terms of what probably could have happened, but that doesn't mean that an agricole in your daiquiri doesn't make an amazingly good daiquiri.
I would say originally I think it would have probably not been a agricole, but it's delicious with agricole. So what does it matter?
Yeah, and while we just before we start having our conclusion, while we're talking in terms of development for you, any young bartenders, there are academies out there. Jamal, obviously, we've mentioned Top Shelf, based in Barbados. But can you do it online? Can people do any online training?
We're looking at it. We are definitely looking at it now, because some of my students actually are still finishing exams right now online. And we do have some interest of persons overseas as well. So it's just to build the website a little bit differently, which our graphic design team is taking a look at. And then also we have to deal with the whole thing about handling credit cards and stuff like that online. So as soon as we can get that started out, we will definitely take a look at it, because other entities are actually, falling in line and doing it now. European Bar School and a couple others are doing online classes now.
Sorry, go ahead.
The only the only thing would be how we would charge for it. That would be the only thing.
I noticed European Bartender School, actually, the nearest location is Miami to actually physically do the course. Is that correct?
Yeah. The closest would be Miami or the Bahamas. Those would be the closest.
And tell me, do you know Springboard in St. Lucia?
Yeah, I've heard of Springboard. I have quite a few friends who live and work in St. Lucia. One of them is actually another former winner like myself and Yearnit over there in St. Lucia. So we keep in close contact all the time.
As we speak, they just sent me an email. As we speak.
Okay. Maybe they're listening. Maybe they're listening to the show, and
maybe they are.
And I noticed Red Stripe do a bar academy every year in Jamaica.
In Jamaica, yeah, they do as well too, yeah. And actually, oh geez, they're gonna kill me for not remembering the name of the academy in Jamaica, but they're doing really great things in Jamaica with food and with drink as well. But they are not only Red Stripe, but there's another academy over there in Jamaica as well too.
Right. Okay, because there's one online which is just the Bartending Academy of Jamaica, which I follow, but I'm not sure which one. And then we talk a little bit about if you need tools of organizations to follow. There's obviously people like WERSPA, which are the Caribbean organization that represents the rum distillers. Quite a fair few of the rum distillers in the Caribbean. Qualifications wise, WSET, the Wine and Spirits Education Trust. They do different levels of qualifications in wine and spirits that you can look to do. Caribbean Hotel and Tourism, obviously, they do some classes online as well. Jamaica Bartending Guild. There's a number of organizations. Go online, do your searches, get your knowledge in, and see. There's so much stuff online that when I was growing up, we didn't have that luxury of that online, so we had to run down to the library. And you mentioned, Manny, just people who to follow.
Well, so lot of you have the opportunity to gain access to a lot of big voices in the industry now. So there's a couple of podcasts. There's one called Bartender at Large. I mean, obviously there's this. There's a couple over here. There's a
This
guy.
as in the Caribbean Rum Chronicles.
Yeah, you can follow us on YouTube if you want to as well.
Yes.
I would also follow the big ambassadors, Danielle Jones, Miguel, and then also engage with chefs as well. Like there's a guy called David Chang from New York who's a chef. It's kind of hearing different voices and how people approach food and beverage is important in your own development, you know.
And bar programs?
Yeah, I mean, so if you can't necessarily gain access to go into some bars, kind of look at what they're doing online. There's some big hitters, the Dead Rabbit and Blacktail out of New York, employees only. Lost Lake, you know, Milk and Honey's big, PDT, and then look at something like the award-winning bars that are doing things in, you know, modern history, like the Clumsies in Greece, Coupet.
Great bar in Athens, man. That's a fantastic rum bar in Athens. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're kind of really dominating the Greek drinking scene now. The Clumsies, they've transformed what drinking is in Greece.
Right. And obviously, any here in the UK that you want to mention?
Bar-wise,
yeah.
I mean, there's Swift, there's Coupet, there's Lucky Kane, then you know, there's loads. Yeah.
Can't forget Trailer.
Trailer Happiness. Yeah. And just to wrap up, guys, because I'm mindful of the time, and we're now into an hour and a half.
Mindful of the time, we're half an hour.
Well, I've been mindful for a long time, but some people like to talk. How can I put a question out for everybody to give me their response, each person, how the future will and can be shaped? I mean, what needs to change? Where are we going? What's your opinions on what we need to do or what is already happening?
Well, I think the things that need to happen have started to happen. I think mentoring is the key. So Jamal being a person in Barbados that people can look up to, Jurnik will be a future mentor for somebody. Jamal is his mentor now. It's kind of like allowing people to have those relationships with you and developing people who are coming up behind you and feeding them information, not spoon feeding them, but allowing them to have the tools to develop themselves. And then it will perpetuate, I think, you know?
Right. Mark?
Well, in order for it to be seen as a viable space for people to get into, they need to be bars in the Caribbean that are recognizable quality drinking establishments that locals will go to, that not just tourists. So if you have a restaurant that a local will go to eat nice food, there might be a bar that they will want to go to drink a nice drink, and then it becomes something, well, okay, I could go to that place and try that drink and try a pumpsicle drink, you know, and all those things will kind of come from that. And also, as you say, highlighting your locals like Daniel Jones from Trinidad. Daniel don't operate in Trinidad at all. He's famous globally, but people in Trinidad have no idea who he is. You know what I mean? So it's things like that. When you can see somebody local, Barbados is far ahead of us with that. You have people like Jamal, you guys like yourself, Quinrick, doing things that your locals could connect with you and see. So we need to have more people locally doing stuff and kind of go. That's my thought.
Right, Jurnik, what do you think? Where are we going?
I think give like the new upcoming bartenders more chance. You know, they're passionate about wanting to do more about bartending, and if you can like give them a chance to show themselves and let them learn, they'll be the future. Like you can help them achieve more. They come with fresh ideas and those kind of things also.
Right. Kelvin?
Yeah, mine's gonna be short and sweet. So people like us doing what we're doing, pushing, promoting, advising, and speaking about us in the Caribbean, how we do things, and having mentors. My mentor is Roger, just like how Jurnik's mentor is Jamal, and we just keep the ball rolling, keep it rolling. That's just for me.
Jamal?
For me, 3 simple things. Know the classics, mentorship, as Manny said, and networking is the next powerful thing. Because every groups like these keep forming. You have the people who are really strong, bringing out those who want to be stronger, and then those people will also pull up those who are looking to gain the knowledge as well.
Lizette?
So that's it for me.
So I agree with Manny completely. I'm always agreeing with Manny. I don't know why, but all the things that need to happen are starting to happen. So that is really positive. I think in our region, we have got a wonderful leader who is the Prime Minister of Jamal's country. Mia is really trying to get the Caribbean to come together. And even though that's on a political level, it's also in terms of a national pride level. And I think that she will be very instrumental in trying to connect the Caribbean, because we work as fingers on a hand. We're very individual, and so therefore we don't share ideas enough. But I think with one person encouraging us to come together, it will be much easier for me to speak to someone in Curacao or Barbados or St. Lucia, and we'll connect and share our diversities so that we can open these, and WordSpa will be a really important part of that as well. But we'll be able to express who we are individually, but collectively. So it is all starting to happen. And I think groups like this are just, honestly, they're just so valuable, because how else would we all be able to be in this one space speaking to all these people who care about the Caribbean and want to understand our culture and want to share and give us, give us little gems and tips as well, so we can share with other people. That's it.
Nice.
And Flavio just asked the question: Is there many opportunities in the for a European bartender to come and work and get experience in the Caribbean? So he's flipping it.
Plenty.
He's flipping it on his head. He wants to come and work in the Caribbean.
We have plenty, Flavio.
How good is.
Yeah.
Well, I think on in relation, just to make the final closing statement on, unless somebody's really need to say something, I think the most important thing, Flavio, is that what we do need is people like yourself who've got extensive experience to pass on that knowledge to those who are up and coming in the Caribbean, whether that means you working in the Caribbean or whether that means you're part of a platform or a means of passing on some of that knowledge, because I know you have an extensive amount. Those role models for me are very important. I think people in the Caribbean, we just have to be able to somehow see that a career in bartending is not just a job of putting ice and 2 ingredients into a glass, and that there is a whole creativity. A bartender is his palate is as important as a chef's palate, right? He's blending liquids, a chef's blending food, right? So your skills are just as important as any bartender, as any chef. And I can tell you now, globally, outside of the Caribbean, there are bartenders or people who started in bartending. And some of them are not just bartenders, they've moved into management positions or ambassador positions, who are earning exceptionally good money in their careers now. And that they've started from bar backing, washing up and providing, cutting ingredients in order for somebody else to do their job. And some of these people are now earning exceptional 6-figure salaries within the industry. So there is a career path there. It may not be so obvious in the Caribbean, but where anything, the most important thing is to have passion. If you love something enough and you want to get somewhere, right, then you need to dedicate yourself and put the work in and learn. I'm tired of talking to bartenders who don't know their classics, right? I mean, it's your job, right? And it's your job. I mean, I'm not a bartender, and I know the classics, and that's not my job, right? So you need to understand the basics and put the commitment in and put the work in. And Denzel Washington did a great speech about the word ease, right? And if you ever want to look that up, and he talks about the fact that there's more to learn from hardship than there is to learn from ease. Nobody gets anywhere in life with ease. Right, and it needs commitment, it needs dedication, but it's for people like us to let people understand that they don't see the pathway, and we have to give them that pathway and give them our experiences and our knowledge and help them to get along the way. So I hope, and we intend to do that with Caribbean Rum Chronicles. There are many other platforms that we've mentioned that you can follow. Do your research on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. There's podcasts out there to gain knowledge. Now, one of the challenges you have when you are searching for knowledge is that you are going to see conflicting things. So something Manny told you, or something Jamal told you, or something Jurnik told you. Somebody will tell you the complete opposite, or you'll see somebody, some American, the famous video of an American making an old-fashioned completely wrong, right? And that went viral. But how do you know it's wrong if you've never been mentored and told what is right? And that is, so choose your mentor. Listen, whoever you follow them, see if that makes sense. Read, and that will help you along your journey. So, lady and gentlemen, thank you very much for your contribution today. I hope that you've enjoyed our episode today. We will record it. You can follow us on Facebook, Caribbean Rum Chronicles. On Instagram, it's Carib Rum Chronicles, but if you search Caribbean Rum Chronicles, we'll come up. And we are trying to improve in terms of posting up as much information as possible about what we discuss in our shows. And however, if there's something particularly you need, message us on our social media platforms, follow us, message us, and then we will send you the link or we'll post it up for you. So thank you very much. And from everybody here, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Don't log off yet, people. We're still on. Don't log off yet.